Hey everybody, Doug here. Several weeks ago, I participated in something that we called Stream Day 2022 with a bunch of other YouTubers who are in the video production space. And we wanted to have a nice, slick, nice, clean presentation and wanted to do some graphics in there. And so I took the time to create some graphics for not just myself, but for everybody else. And wanted to show you guys how I did what I did. So before I go into the details, first of all, let me show you what that actually looked like, and pay attention as you're watching this to how many times you see me press buttons to trigger things. So here we go. Hey everybody, we're live here on my channel, part of Stream Day 2022. If you're just joining me, as the first stream you're watching today, you need to go and check out a page on John Barker's website. You can get there, h2r.li/streamday, to see a rundown of all the shows that are happening here today. My name is Doug. I run a video production company in Utah and here in the United States. I want to thank everybody for joining us for Stream Day today. This is exciting. I'm sure we'll make things go a little bit more smoothly in the future. But anyway, so come back and join us for our panel discussion here in a few hours. That will be on John's channel. My name is Doug. My website is djprod.biz. You can find me there. Also, if you want to find me on my YouTube channel, you can get there. Quick link is djp.li/YouTube. For information about any of the products that I've talked about here today, you can find those in the video description down below. And then up next we have Petra over at TechCondo. She's going to be talking about how to select a video switcher. So be sure and share and like these videos and subscribe to all the creators that are here today. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time. After that presentation was over, I had a number of people reach out to me and ask me how I pulled off what I did. So I'm going to go through all of the details on how all of that was done here today. The one piece of equipment that you might be surprised actually was used to pull all this off is sitting right here in front of me. This is a Blackmagic Design HyperDeck Studio 4K Pro. And the reason I had to go with this specific model is it's the only one in that lineup that will play back 4K video with an alpha channel. And I know some of you are not familiar with what that means, so just let me explain briefly. So whenever you have video that you want to have transparent elements, whether that be fully transparent or fully opaque or somewhere in between, so partially transparent, you'll add what is called an alpha channel to your video. So in addition to your red, green, and blue channels, there's also one more channel that's transparency information. And I'll show you what that looks like here in a minute. But basically, that alpha channel is what allowed me to do what I did there. So let me hook this up. I'll show you how that's done, and then we'll go through and look at what that video and its alpha channels actually look like. So I've actually got just 3 connections here. So I've got power, obviously, and then I have 2 SDI connections that are made on the back of the unit here. On some of these HyperDeck units, they have multiple SDI outputs, and they're labeled A and B. And what those are used for is the transparency information, or the alpha channel. Output A contains what we call the fill, or basically the main image that we want people to be able to see, and then output B contains the alpha channel, which is the transparency information that the switcher is going to use to know where to use the graphic and where to allow the background video to show through. But that's it in terms of connections. It's just those 2. Now, in terms of which models of the HyperDeck actually have this feature, that's anything from the HyperDeck Studio HD Plus up. So the HD Pro and the 4K Pro all have that. Or if you want to look into a used unit, the HyperDeck Studio Mini from 2017 also has this capability as well. So what you're seeing here on your screen, first of all, up here where I'm at, that is going to be the output of what's coming out of the switcher, the final program output. Down below, I've got a couple of windows set up to let you see what's coming out of the HyperDeck. So over here on this side, down below here, that is the A output on the HyperDeck, which is the main graphic, the fill. And then over here on this other side, this is going to be the key, or output B, on the HyperDeck. This is the transparency information that I've talked about. So in this case, what you're seeing is that is completely white. So what happens with this signal is anything that is white becomes fully opaque, anything that is black is fully transparent, and then anything in between is partially transparent. So you're able to blend your background with your foreground graphic. So if you were to actually see what's going on in the Blackmagic ATEM software control right now, you'd see that my camera is the live source on the program output, but you're not seeing me because there's a keyer on top of it with an opaque video source. So I'm going to go ahead and press the play button, and you'll be able to see what this actually looks like for real. So as we get to the 0-second mark, we're going to go through an animated transition and watch that window, because you'll see some black and some gray show up, and those will be areas that are transparent or at least partially transparent. And we're going to go a little bit farther here, and I'm going to go ahead and hit stop on that right there with the lower third. So basically what we're seeing here is that we've got a graphic, the lower third, that has a black background, but it's not showing as black because it's partially transparent. So you notice as I kind of move my hands around here that you can actually see through that graphic. And the reason we can do that is because the alpha channel on the video is that gray color you see in the lower right. It's basically saying allow some of the background to show through on here. And the closer it is to white, the more opaque the video is. The closer it is to black, the more transparent it is. Now I'm going to go ahead and start the outro and let you see exactly what that looks like once again. So here's the outro. This is a series of lower thirds with some animations thrown on top of that. So as you can see, it transitions from one lower third to the next. It's got this, what we call a revealer on top of it. And that revealer is used to make that portion of the graphic basically opaque for that portion while it's transitioning from one lower third to the other. You can see that alpha channel there in the lower right. As we get to the very, very end here, it's going to do an animated transition, and then we're going to go to black. And that black is not me switching the switcher to a black video source. That black is actually baked into the video and just happens to be 100% opaque. So there it goes. There does the transition, and now we're seeing just black because that is what the HyperDeck is telling the switcher to do. In this case, I'm using a downstream keyer, and you see here I've got downstream key number 1 opened up here in my palettes. And what we're going to want to do here is set the fill source to be the SDI input on your switcher that's connected to the SDI-A output on your HyperDeck, and then the key source set to be the input that's connected to the B output, B SDI on the HyperDeck. In this case, I don't want to use a pre-multiplied key because the video source that I'm using is not pre-multiplied. So I've got that pre-multiply turned off, and I've got the clip value set to 50 and the gain value set to 21. That's going to vary a little bit based on what software you use and the graphics that you happen to be using. So you might want to play with those numbers a little bit in order to find something that works for the type of graphic that you're doing. Aside from that, the only other thing that I need to do is to actually take that key live. And if I was to do that right now, I hit the on air button here, you'll see that it goes to that map because that is 100% opaque. Alright, the other thing that I need to do is I need to set up the ATEM software control software to talk to my HyperDeck in order to trigger playback and whatnot. So in order to do that, I'm going to go down here to the lower left. I'm going to click this little gear icon, and then on the HyperDeck tab, we're going to set up the configuration parameters in order to make that happen. So I'm going to call this one HyperDeck number 3. So I'm going to be adjusting the parameters associated with HyperDeck 3 here. And I checked the front panel of my device and took note that its IP address is 10.1.8.164. And then this input here I need to change. So it's actually connected to input number 14, so I'll change that there. And then I also have this auto roll option checked. And what that basically does is tells the HyperDeck anytime this particular input goes live. So if I select input 14 and say cut or auto on my switcher, or even take it as part of a key, that will automatically trigger playback on the HyperDeck. You can choose one way or another how you want to do that. I like to use auto roll for most things, but in this particular situation, I don't. I like to be able to control that with macro, so I'm going to turn that off right now. But very often when I'm doing video playback for events, I have the auto roll turned on, so it's just a matter of the technical director selecting that input, hitting auto or cut, and the playback will start automatically. Alright, with that, I'm going to go ahead and click on save. We are actually pretty much ready to go in ATEM software control. So we're going to jump into the Adobe products that I used to create the graphics and show you how I did that. I personally don't really have much by the way of graphical design skills, and so I need a little bit of help. And in this case, I'm using digitaljuice.com. It's been the service that I've used for many years in order to come up with some graphics that are actually going to look good. So first thing we're going to need is we're going to need a lower third, an animated lower third. And I spent quite a bit of time searching, and the one that I landed on for this is called Real Blogger B. So I'll go ahead and click on this and let you see what that looks like. So you can see that as a preview there. And Fortunately, Digital Juice has these as After Effects projects. I'll show you in a minute why that matters. So they actually offer them as just animated lower thirds, which are just video files as well. But I prefer the After Effects project whenever I can get them, because that allows me to do some things that you just can't do otherwise. So the After Effects project has the text already laid out and ready to go, and then a place for the logo. So I've extracted that After Effects project, loaded into After Effects, and now I've got it up here as a composition within the software. So fortunately, Digital Juice provides a little bit of instruction in how to do some of this thing. So before I get into that, though, let me kind of show you what this looks like. So as I scrub through here, you can see that there's our Stream Day 22 logo, and there's the text animating in. And if I pause on there, you can see that there actually is some motion blur on that, and that's something that you're going to get out of products like After Effects or Apple Motion or Fusion in terms of the Blackmagic software, but you're not going to get out of just the strict video editor application. So you're not going to find that in Final Cut or Premiere natively. So if you want to have that as a part of your project, then you need to get into some of these more advanced tools. All right, with that said, though, I've already done the replacements here, but I'm going to go ahead and double click on this composition, which allows me to see that there are two compositions that make up this graphic. We've got one for the text and one for the logo. I'm going to go ahead and double click on this text one here, and you can see that there is that animated frame, and then we've got places in here for the actual text itself. So double click to open up that one, double click to open up that one, and there we are. We're finally at the place where the actual text is located. So we've got two different ones here. We've got the subtext, and then we've got the header text, and I tweaked those obviously from the way that they originally existed, but yeah, that's kind of the general idea. So I also replaced the logo as well. So come over here, we can see that there's the logo, and that can be replaced. So I just dropped in the Stream Day 22 logo that John Barker provided as part of this. All right, so the next thing that I needed to do is I needed to turn this into something that I could use in Premiere. And instead of just creating the animated lower thirds in this software and then exporting to Premiere, I used something that's called the Motion Graphic Template, MoGrT, M-O-G-R-T. And that makes it really, really easy to produce these things one after another, just churn them out very, very quickly. And in the case of Stream Day, I needed to create a whole bunch of them. I needed to create one for each of the different presenters as well as a few others. And so I used a MoGrT to do that. And what we want to do here is we want to go up to the window menu and choose Essential Graphics, and that's going to allow me to do some pretty cool things. I need to make sure that I've got the main composition selected as the primary, otherwise it's only going to render one of the sub-compositions. We don't want to do that. But the Essential Graphics capability allows me to specify elements within the After Effects project that I want to be able to replace in Premiere. So like a minute ago we had the text compositions up. So here we go over to edit text. And what I want to do here is I want to say I want to be able to change this text from within Premiere and not have to come back into After Effects in order to re-render. So come open up the text properties here, the text layers, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this source text attribute here. I'm going to drag that up into the Essentials panel and drop it, and I'm going to do the same thing with subtext as well. So there we go. So now I have text that can actually be replaced in here. So I've got header text, and then I'm just going to change the name on this, subtext. There we go. And that way, when I go ahead and use this in Premiere, it'll make a little bit more sense as to what's going on. The other one that I'm going to do here is I'm going to allow replacement of the graphic. So find the logo here. There is the logo that we're going to want to be able to replace. I'll take that and drag that up into the Essential Graphics as well. And so that will allow me to replace that in Premiere should I want to do that. All right, so the only other things I need to do here is I need to give this a name. So we'll call this Stream Day Lower Third. And back to the main composition. Scroll to where we have a nice looking frame. I'm going to set the poster time right there, so you see a preview of what that's going to look like within Premiere. And then I'm going to go ahead and save the project, and then from there I'm going to go ahead and click on this Export Motion Graphics Template button, and then what that's going to do is it's going to bring up this other window, verify some little pop-ups here, and then that is going to take and make that available in Premiere. So let's open Premiere and take a look at that. I've already got a timeline set up in Premiere for brevity and make this go as quick as I can. The next thing I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to open up the Essential Graphics panel. So there it is under the menu, window menu. And that's going to bring up the list of Essential Graphics, motion graphics, MoGRTs, MoGrTs. And scroll down here to near the bottom, and I've got one called Stream Day Lower Third. And then from there, all I really need to do is drop that into the timeline. I'm going to keep existing settings on that. I was going to head and load that motion graphic, and as I scrub around, you can see that is now a part of the timeline. Now, the other thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to make sure that I set this to scale to frame size. There we go. And the After Effects project is actually the wider screen 4K, not Ultra HD like we tend to use for video. From here, if I want to change the text, I just have to go up here to this line. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in my name and then put in my website, djprod.biz. There we go. And so you can see that it actually updated that lower third right from within Premiere. I don't have to touch anything in After Effects at this point at all. So scroll through here, we can see it's animating. It's actually got the motion blur on that text, and effectively that's ready to go at this point. I don't need to do anything more with that. In the original video that I showed you, there's a whole series of animated lower thirds that were popped up as part of the outro, so I'm going to need to create at least a couple more here in order to demonstrate some of the techniques that I use. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag another one of these lower thirds onto the timeline. Go ahead and change the text on this one. So I'm going to do Doug Johnson Productions in this case. I'll use my company name. And I'll link to a short link which goes to my YouTube channel, so djp.li/YouTube. Alright, so with that, we've got that graphic created. And then again, I need to right click on that and make sure I scale to frame size. So we've got the one that ends, and then the next one starts immediately thereafter. And then let's do one more, so I'm drag in one more as well, and then we'll change the text on that, and we're going to say have a great day, and then word smile. Alright, we'll just do something silly, right? There we go. So we got our lower third for that, and again, need to do the scale to frame size. Alright, so as I kind of navigate through here, you can see those lower thirds on top of one another, which is great, but I don't want them to pop up constantly like that. I want to have something that's a little more seamless. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the end of this one just before it starts to animate, and then I'm going to hit the W key to terminate it there. It's basically pull back the end. And then on this one, I'm going to go to where this one has come in fully. There we go. So that frame right there, I'm going to hit the Q button to trim that one. So now as I go through the timeline, you see that it actually cuts from one to the other. For now, we're going to ignore the fact that the text actually is just a little bit too long for the box. And then I'm going to do the same thing for this other one. So just before that one starts to animate out, so we'll find the last frame that's still, there we go, W key to shorten, to trim that, and then come down here to where this one has stopped animating, stopped moving. There we go, that's that frame. Hit Q. So now if I play this, it just cuts from one of those to the next, and then the last one will animate out. But say, for example, that I don't want that to be just a cut like that. I want to actually do something a little more exciting. I'm going to use what I did with the original video. I'm going to use a revealer. These are, again, something I got from Digital Juice. I'm going to load a handful of those here. So this crossing over is the one that I originally used, but I've got a couple other ones in here that I downloaded just last night. And so I'm going to grab those, load those in, and show you how I did that. So what we want to do here is these revealers are graphics that are designed to reveal something, as you can tell by the name. So if I go ahead and click on play, you can see that there is a portion of that where it's going to hide something behind it, right? So I'm not going to use this one because I already used that one before, and I want to do something a little bit different. So I've got this other one here. It's called Field of Flames, and it is obviously some flames. So we can go to a frame roughly somewhere around here. We're going to use that to cover up the transition between the two elements. So what I'm going to do that is I'm going to go ahead and drag this down into the timeline. right about there, and we're gonna use that flame animation to cover up that transition. Let me make this a little bit bigger so you can see what's going on. All right, there we go. All right, so yeah, we're gonna move this back one frame, because that seems to be where it's fullest. This one would transition from one to the next. But obviously we're not covering the graphic yet, so I'm going to need to do some scaling on this thing. This graphic was originally HD, and this is a 4K timeline, so I'm going to need to do tweak things a little bit. But what we're going to do here is we're going to want to go up to the effect controls, and then I'm going to change the location of this, move it down, move it over, and then I'm going to need to scale it a fair amount too in order for it to cover the graphic. So I'm going to uncheck uniform scale. That way I can actually stretch it. So I've got scale height here, move it up a little bit more, and then I'm going to scale the width. This isn't going to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be. But essentially what we have here is now we have flames that are overlaying. We're going to overlay the transition. You can see even there, that works pretty well. So the flames go, and when the flames disappear, the other graphic is underneath. I like to ease that a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and select the two video clips, and then use the Control D to do an animated transition on top of that. But let's shorten that up quite a bit. That's too long. There we go. So play that. You can see that kind of looks pretty cool. Maybe we want that to go a little bit faster, because these are not on screen for very long. All right, looks pretty good, right? I need to make a couple changes here. So these text layers, the lower thirds, are not staying on screen very long, so we need to make them a little bit longer. I'm going to move this one out of the way, and then I'm going to come down here and change the speed duration on this one. So I'll play it back at 50% speed, so it lasts twice as long. And then I can drop this other one back in place. And we'll do the same thing on that. Set the speed on that 50%. All right. So now we have our flame. Yep. All right, that looks pretty good. Let's speed that up a little bit. We want to go just a little more quickly on that one. So I'm going to go 200% on that. That's going to require me to reposition. So I need to find that frame where it's more or less filled. So that's probably that one right there. I'm going to drag that over so that's the center of the cut. All right. Play. There we go. Yeah, so nice and fast. It hides the transition between the two different layers. All right, let's use a different one for this other one. So we've got this one. Yeah, something kind of electric and exciting there. So I'm going to drop that onto the timeline here. Find the frame where most of it's covered, like the one right there, and then drag that back so that that's centered on the cut. Now, before I do that, though, I'm going to speed this on up too. So I'm just going to go 150 on this one. It's fairly quick as it is. All right, so let's find that frame again. Right there. Drag that over to the cut point, and then we'll kind of get a preview of what that looks like. All right, there we go. Now we need to just move that into place. So go to that cut, and then go to the effects controls. And looks like scale-wise we're probably more or less okay. Although I could probably shorten it horizontally. But yeah, let's move this around a little bit. Open up scale. We don't want uniform scale. Scale width will bring that in a little bit there. So there we go. We're just covering up the box and nothing more, effectively. All right, there we go. So that one's again disguising that transition between those two text layers, and just in case, we'll add that cross dissolve across those two as well. All right, there we go. So now we've got an animated transition between those two different layers. The next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to have a full screen animated wipe to transition the entire video, not just the lower third, to black. So I'm going to go back to Digital Juice again and grab one of those. We've got this one that's called Cube Count. We're going to go ahead and load that and play. There you go. That's what that's going to look like. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the end of the timeline here. First, I'll get rid of this dissolve. We don't want that. And then I'm going to drag that cube count onto my timeline. And what we're going to want to do with this one, same thing. We're going to want to find that frame where the screen is full. There we go. And center that over where that cut's going to be. So it fills the screen. And then as it fades away, we're going to want to go to black. But by default, everything in Premiere is transparent unless there is a video layer that's on top of that. So if I was to just take this and render it as is and play it, yes, we'd transition, but it would come back to the live camera because at this point, the only thing on the timeline is transparent. So I'm going to need to add a black layer in here. So I'm going to go up here and say New Item, Black Video. Okay. Take that and drop that into the timeline. There we go. And so now it's transitioning from lower thirds, which cover just a portion of the screen, to a transition which covers all of the screen. And then as that fills the screen, we're going to cut to black video underneath. And so here, as it fades away, we're going to be doing black video, not transparent anymore. The black video is fully opaque. And then just to make sure that we've got enough time there, I'm going to drag that all the way out here and give us a little bit more time to remember to cut away to a different source, because basically as soon as this video finishes playing, the HyperDeck is going to go back to essentially fully transparent mode, revealing whatever layer is behind our graphic. All right, so with that, we've got our lower thirds. We've got transitions between them. There we go. Transition 1, transition 2, and then when we get to the very end, you know what, I'm going to move this back again so that we don't see this animation. So I'm going to go ahead and W to cut that, and then I drag this back. There we go. So we've got our lower third, and then it's going to transition with the graphic on top of that. All right, the other element that I had as part of that is some music. So I'm going to go ahead and open up and pull in. I'll use something a little bit different for music this time, so I'm going to go to this Vacay and Fiji. This is from YouTube Music Library. Pretty much anytime if you do anything on YouTube, you either have to license your music or get it from YouTube Music Library. So in this case, I just used YouTube Music Library. All right, so we've got, so there's our audio file. I'm going to drop it into the timeline. Obviously, it's going to be way too long, but there's an easy thing we can do to fix that. So all right, so there is a tool that's available in newer versions of Premiere. Open it. It's called the Remix tool. So I'm going to grab that Remix tool, zoom out a little bit. You can see this is way too long. What I do is I come over here to the end and drag this back here, and Premiere is going to analyze that clip and it's going to figure out ways to cut that up so that it meets your target length. So you can see here, it wasn't able to get it totally as short as I asked it to, but we're going to deal with that. It's going to be just fine. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take and just bring back the beginning of it a bit, and then that way I can move this over so the music fades out after this transition. So I'll bring that back just a little bit more. There we go. So the music is fading out as that graphic is fading away, and then I'm going to go ahead and put a fade on the beginning of that, so it'll fade in slowly. The other thing I'm going to do here is going to want to adjust the gain on this. I'm going to set the maximum gain here to minus 12 dB. That way it's still going to be, it'll be quiet enough. I'll be able to talk over it. All right, so we've got all of our elements here. We've got our lower thirds. We've got some graphic transitions on top of those. We've got a full screen wipe going to black video, and then underneath all of that we have an audio layer. The next trick here is going to be to render this to be played back on the HyperDeck. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control M to tell it that I want to render this. And this is where we need to be kind of careful about the settings and to make sure that this is going to work. So we've got stream day, and we'll call it intro. It's not really the intro. We'll call this one stream day outro test. And we're going to want to change the number setting here. First of all, we want to change the format here to QuickTime. QuickTime is the wrapper that we're going to use. And then we're not going to use a preset on this. We're going to actually go through and set things the way that we need to. So the first thing we need to do is we need to change the video codec here. It's the one that actually supports transparency, because by default, the ones that we normally export with do not. And in terms of Apple ProRes, which we're going to use, and we're going to make sure the HyperDeck is set to ProRes. We're going to choose 4444, which is one way of saying that it has video layer and then it has a transparency layer. So normally we talk about 444. Well, that extra 4 on the end when we have 4 here, 4 fours here is for the basically how much information is available for transparency. We're going to make sure that we've got some other settings here that we set up right. I'm going to set the color depth here to 8 bits per channel plus alpha. The alpha channel is important. That's what actually gives us the transparency information. Everything else looks good. Yeah, I'm in Rec 709. Everything looks good there. Audio, we do have music on there, so we're going to want to make sure we've got audio included as part of the file. We'll just do uncompressed for now. And with that, everything looks good. So we've got the right resolution, the right frame rate for the video they're going to be playing back. We've got the audio set for 48 kilohertz in stereo. So I've got the right file name, I've got the right location, and I'm going to go ahead and click on export to generate this file. And this won't take very long, so it'll go pretty fast. So even though we've got multiple layers in there, we've got transparency, the render time on this is not going to be too bad. So we'll finish up that render, and I'm going to copy to a card, and then I'll let you see what that actually looks like. So all I had to do with that was take that rendered file, copy it to an SD card, and then I popped that SD card into that HyperDeck, and I made sure that the HyperDeck is set to use ProRes as its video codec. From here, it's actually pretty easy. All we need to do is make sure that we've got the right clip selected. We turn on our downstream key that we set up earlier, and everything should just work. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and turn on that downstream key because I happen to know that we're sitting on a transparent frame. So there we go. So now on air, come over to the Media Players tab, choose the right HyperDeck here, open up this window showing which clips are available. I'm going to go ahead and click on this new one that we just created, Stream Day Outro Test. And then that's been selected. And then if I press the play button, we should see that new animation we just barely created, and we should hear the music play in the background. So there we go. There we go. So we've got the lower third with the graphics, full transparency being supported here. Looks great, looks amazing. And then we're going to do the full screen transition. It's going to transition to that black layer. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn off the layer so you can see me again. But at that point, there's black video playing on the video clip, and so you're not able to see anything. So the only thing left we have to do with the graphic working would be to create a macro within ATEM software in order to basically do all these steps that are involved with playing back and making sure that the transparency is set properly. I've done other videos on how to do that, so I'm not going to do that right now. But essentially it boils down to making sure we have the right parameter set for the downstream key. So we set it to the right inputs. We set the clip and gain parameters. Then we want to select the right video clip on the HyperDeck tab, turn on that downstream key, and then start video playback. And that's essentially it. When I did mine, I did a little bit more than that. I also had mine using just macros through Companion. Changed my audio mixer so that it muted my microphone, so that at that point I knew that I wouldn't have to be worried about being heard. And I also set it to change the video source on the switcher to be black video, so that when the video clip ended, it didn't cut back to me. So it would end on black at that point. So I'll save the macro discussion for another day. Plenty of videos on YouTube about how to do macros. But that's essentially it. So yeah, so using Adobe Premiere to produce the videos ahead of time made it so that it was very, very easy. The fact that it supports transparency, most other video editors do as well, but the fact that it supported transparency is what made this super, super easy. So I could have graphics on standby waiting to go that are fully transparent, and all I need to do in order to make them play is hit a single button to start a macro. It starts playback. The graphics come up on screen as needed, complete with transitions that are all pre-recorded and ready to go, and basically we're done. So It's much easier than it looks, and using this kind of technique really ups your game quite a lot. So again, in terms of hardware, all you need is a HyperDeck Studio player that has the separate A and B outputs. If you're shooting HD, the HD Plus will work for that, as well the HD Pro. But if you're just shooting 4K, you really do have to step up to the 4K Pro model of that in order to do that, the alpha transparency playback on those units. And that's it. So you just need the player, some assets, and spending a little bit of time in your video editing software. All right, if you have any questions about this, you can certainly leave those in the comment section down below, or join us over on Discord, where it's me and a bunch of other people in the video production community that are very eager to help. So, great community there. Thanks everybody for watching, and have a fantastic day.